All right, so tonight's presentation, so welcome. My name is Donna Stock, VP for University Advancement, a proud member of WIN and one of the initial ones that worked with Lori to launch this group. And there's a number of the people here on the call tonight who are active members and some of those initiating members as well.
The founding mothers, the founding mothers.
Tonight, this is formatted as a meeting. You will have the ability to obviously have your camera on and your microphone, although we're going to ask you to keep it muted until you're called upon. If you have questions during the course of the presentation, this is supposed to be a nice interactive opportunity for you to pose some questions directly to CeCe. We ask you to use the chat feature down below in the toolbar. I hope most people, I think, are familiar with the Zoom, but we'll see. And then we're recommending that you use the speaker view and side by side. And if you go up to your right-hand corner, you see the box that says view, and there's three choices there. The second one should say side by side speaker. And that'll allow you to see both the presenter and the slides at the same time. And there's a little in the middle, you'll see a little slide bar if you want to make the presentation, if you can't see it. Although we don't have slides tonight, right? I think it's just a conversation. All right, so we don't have to worry about that necessarily. So most of us, or many of us, have Headspace on our phones. I have it there, which you can't see. And you know, it's a great product to use, an app to use as we're dealing with these challenging times and looking for ways to, you know, find some chill out time and some space of our own. So we're thrilled that CeCe Morken can be with us here this evening and talk about leadership roles that she now has at the company and that how she's gotten to the spot where she is today, and then a little bit about the app itself. I also want to thank the Women's Impact Network and especially Patty Newcomer Small, class of '90, who helped to bring this presentation to us this evening. She was telling us early that CeCe was an officiant at her wedding in December. So they've known each other for a number of years. And
Donna, that's the first time somebody has said my new last name sort of out loud. And I was just like, huh, that's kind of weird.
So we'll get into this right now. I just want to remind you too that Headspace has offered us 10 raffle codes to get a discount on the Headspace app. So if you stay the duration of the presentation, then you'll be automatically entered into the raffle. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Lori, who is going to make some additional remarks here.
Sure. Thanks, Donna. And good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's great to see so many friends and longtime supporters of WPI here with us, and also to see some new folks joining us. So I'm Lori Leshin. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president of WPI and also one of the founding mothers of WIN, and thrilled to have, you know, now what, 5 years in, I think, see this group and the amazing impact it's made on the campus, which I know Patty's going to tell you more about. So I will resist talking about all the
You can say whatever you want, Lori. I can
adjust. This group has done. Well, they asked me to talk a little bit about, share some thoughts about women in leadership, which boy, how long do we have? But I'll keep it quite short. It is Women's History Month, and so I think it's really appropriate. And the library actually today tweeted out a really nice sort of timeline of women at WPI going all the way back to 1869 with Marietta Fletcher, who was the first female instructor at WPI, all the way back in the late 1860s, if you can believe that. All the way up through Audrey Carlin, our first female graduate, and Jane and Leslie, who we all know, who are our first two female undergraduates who 53 years ago entered WPI this fall, and all the way up to me, who as our 16th president am the first woman in the role. And now coming to the end of my 7th year at WPI, which is really hard to believe, but it's been such an incredible journey. And I think this is a really amazing moment for women in leadership, if you think about it. This challenging time we have faced just over this last year. I have had the pleasure and privilege of working with some truly incredible women leaders. And we have needed the kind of engaging and thoughtful leadership that women often bring to the table. And I'll just briefly tell you that, you know, I had the honor of serving on Governor Baker's reopening advisory board with a small number of other folks, about 17 of us, led by our wonderful Lieutenant Governor, Karen Polito, who is an amazing woman leader. But one of the people I got to know well in that was a colleague from Mass General Hospital, who's was the head of infectious diseases at Mass General, a woman named Rochelle Walensky, who you may now have heard of because she became the director of the CDC under President Biden. And I never knew her before, but through the process of working on reopening the state and also on reopening higher ed, which we've been doing a lot of leadership around, she has become a friend and an invaluable advisor. And just again, to see someone step into that role of CDC director, which, you know, talk about being at the tip of the spear, holy cow, but brings not only brilliance as a researcher, as an epidemiologist, as an infectious disease doc, but also as a human being, as a mother, as someone who brings her life experience to the table to take on what is just been truly a devastating time for so many families. I think it's just one example of what great women leaders do. Great women leaders step into the eye of the hurricane and are willing to, you know, do what needs to happen in order to move institutions forward, to move families forward. And I'm just, you know, thrilled to be counted as a colleague for so many amazing women in leadership roles. So, and coming out of this moment, I think, you know, this is a moment for science, not only biomedical science, but all science and technology and engineering to lead the world out of this pandemic, out of so many of the global challenges we face. But it won't work if all we care about is the technology. It's got to come from a place of technology and service to humanity. And again, I think women step into that space really, really naturally. And so, you know, no pressure, but I think we've got a huge opportunity to change the world ahead of us, and we're gonna be stepping up more and more. So I'm just thrilled to get to do that from this seat and to have had an impact on the number of women students at WPI, which we've, as you all know, have worked really hard to increase from 32 or 33% when I arrived here to now 40% women at WPI. This year will be the first graduating class of the higher percentage of women, and I'm very excited to see that. I'm looking to break the top 10 of institutions in terms of number of women engineering graduates. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know if we'll quite make it this year, but we'll be getting closer to that. And then also on the faculty side, you know, we've made changes in how we promote faculty. When I arrived here on my very first day, some of you know this story, on my very first day as president, I walked in and there was a folder on my chair, which was a climate study from our faculty of how they felt like things were going at WPI. And it turned out that 0% of our women faculty were satisfied with our promotion process, 0%. And so it was like, okay, we got to do something about that. And we did. We changed the way we do it. We changed the mentoring. We changed the criteria. We thought much more broadly about how to align our incentive structure with the things we actually value as an institution. What a concept. And just today, we announced our latest class of people to be promoted from associate professor to full, which is where we really changed it, right? No, I bet anything for most all of you when you were here, there were no women full professors in the STEM fields. We just promoted a class that's more than 50% women, or that's exactly 50% women to full professors at WPI, including some truly amazing and inspiring women in STEM fields. So it's really exciting to get to see the change and be the change that we want to see in the world. And you know, CeCe, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say as a woman leader in an absolutely great space. Thrilled to have you with us and thrilled to have the support of all of you through WIN and through WPI alumni networks, just to stay connected to us and help us keep driving the change we want to see in the world. So thanks. And now I'm supposed to introduce Patty, right? I'm going to introduce Patty. So Patty's going to say a little bit more about WIN and you know, could not ask for a better advocate for WPI and for programs that have an impact on women. And Patty has been on the WIN executive team and also leading our marketing, is that what we call it, our communications committee?
I think we call it network.
Outreach committee, the network committee.
Right.
Yes, WIN network. She's really driving the expansion of the WIN network. So Patty Newcomer Small, great class of 1990. Welcome.
Thank you. It's crazy to me that it's been over 30 years since I graduated from WPI. And one of the things about COVID that has been good is being able to participate, because I've never lived closer than a flight to WPI.
Sure.
So being able to participate and have all of you from all over the country is terrific. Let me just talk quickly about WIN. It's the Women's Impact Network. It's a philanthropic organization. We raise money and then fund projects on campus to support women in STEM.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of our evaluation process right now. Anybody that belongs to WIN does have input into what we fund. We've raised, in the 5 years that we have been in existence, almost $1 million. We have funded over 50 projects. Audrey could give you a lot more details, but I'm not going to let her. But the projects are just amazing. We had a call, my group 2, led by Maureen, had a discussion right before this to talk about the applications. We always have more applications than we have dollars that we can fund. And so if anybody's not a member of WIN, we'd love to have you. $1 gets you to be part of WIN. You don't have to make a huge contributions, and every dollar counts. But and then we've also been doing more events like this, where we just get exposure to different topics and speakers, and just ways to grow as a group of women. That's probably one of the best parts of this for me, is being able to interact with such a great group of people from WPI. Is that good? Should I, is that a good description of WIN? Any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or reach out to Donna or me, or anybody else that talked that sounded like they know what WIN is. So with that, I'm going to introduce CeCe Morken. CeCe and I have known each other for 12 years. I've worked for her twice. And some of you may have heard that she also officiated my wedding. Just a couple of months ago. And so we are not only work colleagues, but we're friends. Lori, as you were talking about women leaders, I was thinking, I've recently reflected on women leaders in my career, and I've only had 2 female bosses, CeCe, and one female boss early in my career when I was at P&G. And so I could only remember 1 female professor at WPI. I think there was a math professor that was a woman when I was there in the late 80s. Everybody else was men. So I've certainly worked with some great women in my career, but not had that many female bosses or professors. CeCe is the CEO. After a long career at Intuit, CeCe is now the CEO at Headspace. I'm going to ask you, CeCe, to just tell us a little bit about your journey, so I won't steal your thunder. But I just want to say welcome. I'm so thrilled to have you here. I can't wait to ask you some of these questions, and to have everyone be able to learn from you like I have. So I'll open it just by asking you to sort of share a little bit of your journey and how you got to Headspace.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's just awesome to see all of these women coming together after years and years from going to school together. And I loved what Lori shared about, how we can leverage technology to make the world a better place for everyone. So it's just super inspiring to be here. And then I just want to apologize, because literally when Patty started talking, the yard man came, the dog started barking. I heard almost nothing, because I was just like, can someone please help me? So if you saw me going crazy there, it's Zoom. What happened? So apologies for that. Anyway, you asked me what Headspace is about. Is that right?
That would be a good. Well, tell us a little bit about you, and how you got to Headspace, and then we'll do what exactly is Headspace.
That sounds great. So I have been in the tech sector for, gosh, all of my career. I started actually as a systems analyst, programming machines a long, long time ago, and then moved into all the various, parts of a company, and then have been a general manager of different businesses for probably the last 15 or 20 years, long time at Headspace, as Patty mentioned. And in the last several years at Headspace, I was fortunate to be able to take on corporate social responsibility, which ended up being an enormous passion of mine, especially around education of our youth, and especially in areas where there are underserved communities. And so, when Headspace came around and the recruiters called about it, what inspired me to go to Headspace was the mission, to improve the health and happiness of the world. When someone says that's what they're trying to do, it's global. And they are growing really fast, but they need someone who's more seasoned, AKA old, who can help them, get to the next chapter in their growth. I just felt it was a calling for me, and it has been one of the best experiences, if not the best experience I've ever had. It's been incredible.
That's great. And you said a couple of times long-term at Headspace. She meant long-term at Intuit.
Oh, sorry. I've totally moved to Headspace now.
So tell us about Headspace.
So Headspace, it's an app that is focused on mindfulness, and it's, mindfulness, we phrase it as from sunrise to sunset. And so it deals with everything that you might have to deal with during the day. There's a wake up for you. There's mindfulness around your eating. There's certainly meditation, but it's not all about meditation. There's mindful movement. There's mindful music. You may have seen that John Legend is our chief music officer, which is pretty cool. There's how to deal with COVID. There's how to deal with unemployment, how to deal with all kinds of stress that might come up in your life, how to deal with your kids, how to help your kids focus or deal with patience. So how to sleep. So it's just designed to be something that's there for you throughout your day. And again, with our hope is that what we do is help people build healthy routines that last a lifetime.
And what are some of the things that you all at Headspace have learned about mental health during the pandemic?
Oh, it's a great question. Patty, one of the things I would say is that every one of us has mental health. It's just a matter of where we are on the continuum. But 46% of us are going to have a diagnosable mental health condition in our lifetime. 60% of that happens before the age of 14. And what happened with COVID was the stress levels just got so much higher. And instead of mental health and mental awareness being in the shadows, which is where it has been, it came to the forefront. And one of the best things that I saw happen was CEOs of companies made reference to their responsibility for the mental health of their employees. It increased 5x in their earnings calls year over year. And they started talking about mental health themselves. And again, we did many studies this year looking at where stress was coming from. And it turns out, and we know this, but stress is one of the biggest forms, work is one of the biggest forms of stress in most people's lives. And this year, work-life balance became an enormous stress point for people. And just to be candid, Zoom became a huge stress point for people. And so that caused us to think about how we need to change our content and actually how we need to change what we do as a company. Do you mind if I give a couple examples of that?
That'd be great. Yeah, one of the questions I was going to ask is what changes have you made? So that'd be great.
Yeah. So we, again, you have an extra pressure when you are a mindful living company to really make sure that you're taking care of your employees. And so we do a couple of things, and then we share this with our enterprises. So we meditate together as a group. So our all hands always start with a meditation. It's not long, it's about 3 minutes long, but all of us go through the meditation together twice during the day. And now we're about to make it 3 times during the day. We have no meeting blocks. And if you want to join a meditation or water cooler engagement, you can, or you can just do your own thing. We don't care. But if we don't put those no meeting blocks in, everything gets filled up with Zoom calls. And so we literally, the system does not allow you to schedule a meeting in those blocks. Then we did no meeting Fridays. And then we do every other Friday is a no meeting Friday so that you can actually have time just to think, maybe be strategic. And then every alternative Friday is a mind day. So it's just a day to give back to people. So think of it as a 4-day work week, so that you can just deal with the other things that are in your life. We also, as a result of this year, not just COVID, but all the racial injustice of the year, that caused us, frankly, caused me to look at the app and say, hey, this is a lot of candidly, a white British guy, and we need to diversify the voices that are in our app. We already had a woman voice in there, but we've now added people of color into it, people of different nationalities into it. And so it just became really clear that we needed to do a better job representing those who use us.
That's great. Are there other big strategy changes that you made as you came into the company?
Yeah, there's a couple, and keep in mind that the vision is beautiful and I don't want to touch it. Again, I just improve the health and happiness of the world just makes my heart beat faster. And our strategy to build healthy routines that last a lifetime is super important. So I'll mention three big changes that we're doing. I'm going to start with our focus on social good. And as I mentioned, that was a big role of mine at Intuit. And so, and something that Patty knows is big for our family in terms of helping underprivileged neighborhoods with families. So what we've decided to do, first of all, we make our offering free to educators, which can you imagine what they've gone through this year? So it's free for all educators. It's free for all frontline workers. So think of any of the firemen, policemen. It's free for healthcare providers. And we made it free for the unemployed this year, which was, so those were all the new things that we did this year, which was a lot. But my ambition was to make it free for everyone under the age of 18. And so, and the reason for that is the comment I made earlier, where most of this happens before the age of 14. And so our belief is if we could teach the next generations to deal with stress in a different way than the way we learned or didn't learn to deal with stress, we could stop things like teenage suicide or just the stress that we all have in our lives because we didn't learn it early enough. And that would be our way of paying it forward to future generations, which is what I believe our job is to do. And so we're in the process of that. We're starting with 13 to 18-year-olds. And then we're going to be working with policymakers globally to make this part of the education process so that in education, it's part of what happens for people in junior high and high school. So that's probably the biggest change that we had. Second big change is on the technical side. Headspace thinks of itself as a mindfulness company and a content company because that's what's in the app that we produce, and thought less of itself as a technology company, which was interesting to me, but helpful. And so we haven't done a lot of work in terms of leveraging data to deliver super personalized experiences that help build these habitual routines. And so we have been leaning into, and actually we're partnering with the university for this, we've been leaning into machine learning to predict based on why you came to us. Is it stress? Is it sleep? Is it dealing with your kids? Is it to lose weight? What is it? But whatever you came to us for, leveraging machine learning to deliver pathways for you that will most likely get you to the benefit as fast as possible. And so we're calling them mindful maps. And we've just, again, none of this was here when I got here. I've only been here 10 months. Would love to tell you that I could have done something faster, but we've got our first models out there. And so we've just started to launch this. And what's been really interesting is we ask people why you came. 60% of our members have responded and told us why they came to the app so that we can at least start to do the journey. So that was really interesting to see what they would share. And I love seeing the cat joining us.
That's awesome. And then what are some of the things you mentioned, John Legend, but what are some of the things that you're excited about this year? I mean, there's some really cool things that you're doing.
There is some really cool things. First of all, I love, love, love the new voices that have come into our app as meditation instructors. They're great. One of the other things that we did this year that we hadn't done was community work. So we have a community story every day. And so when you see the community story every morning, it's somebody from around the world telling a story, and it's a member. And the stories are great. It's about what they do. This morning was discovery of how cheetahs learn. One of our principles is our values. Our very first value is curious minds. And we use the phrase beginner's mind. So we ask all of our employees to show up at things with a beginner's mind. And again, Patty would know this. I value learn-it-alls over know-it-alls. And so beginner's mind is a way of just approach everything as the first time and have the openness to learn from others. And so this morning's wake up was about cheetahs and how cheetahs learn after they're born. And it was a beautiful story and fascinating. So community was a new aspect that we brought into it. You're probably thinking of the more celebrity type things. And so we launched Sesame Street this year. And Sesame Street was great because if you can envision, this is Andy, who is the monk who founded Headspace. It's Andy teaching Cookie Monster how to deal with patience. And if you guys know Cookie Monster, he's not great
or Cookie Monster, I like that.
Yeah, or Cookie Monster, yeah. But it's teaching, and it's a great way for children to learn some of these skills. So whether it's dealing with anger, or whether it's Cookie Monster and dealing with patience, that series has been super popular with parents. And again, just a different way to teach kids something. Netflix, we're super excited about. So Netflix, sorry, that's the dog. Netflix approached us, and they approached us because they felt that they needed to have something on Netflix that taught people how to better deal with stress as well. And they recognized that mindfulness was becoming mainstream. So January 1st, we launched the very first session of Netflix. We had 20 million unique views in the month of January. 20 million people watched it from all over the world. In fact, countries we don't pay attention to. We're in about 6 countries intentionally. But of course, as you know, apps can be downloaded anywhere. And it was actually strongest in countries like Africa, which was super interesting to us. And so Netflix now has come back and said, we want 2 more. And by the way, we went straight to series, so no pilot. They just said, we're going straight to series with this. And so they've come back we're doing 2 more now. And the end of April, we will launch Sleep, which should be a really exciting one. It is now the most downloaded past meditation. So Sleep is hugely popular. And then in the end of July, August timeframe, we're launching a parents and kids version for Netflix, which is to help everybody get ready to go back to school. So those have been great ways for us to offer content that gets out to the world. We don't monetize that, obviously, Netflix does, but it's a great way just to increase the awareness of mindfulness and the impact it can have. I can't not mention John Legend because John Legend and Hans Zimmerman are music. One's the chief music officer, and then one's a coach to us on what kinds of content to offer. But John Legend was at our all hands, and it was great. So he's super engaged with us. Obviously does recordings for us, but all the employees get a chance to join and ask him questions, and they ask him hysterical questions, like even things like, which of Chrissy's cookbook recipes do you like the best? So it's really good.
Awesome. And CeCe, if for the women on the call that haven't tried Headspace, do you have any advice on sort of how to start?
It's a great question, Patty. I would, there's so much content in there. And, one of the things I mentioned, we've never leveraged things like AI to deliver the content to you in a way that's a little more digestible. There's thousands of hours of content in there. There's so much. In fact, sometimes someone will tell me there's something there and I'm like, really? I didn't even know about it. So there's a lot of content. So I would start with if I'm telling you what's in there, whatever is most important to you. So know that these things are in there. There is meditation in there, and there's everything from the basics. So you're just getting started to if you want to focus on something very specific like stress or like appreciation, which I love the appreciation series, because then when I join the office every day, the first thing I do is take the time to appreciate my team. So things like appreciation are really good. It also causes you to not focus so much on yourself and what you might be dealing with, and instead to focus a little bit more on others. If sleep has been an issue, sleep is fantastic. And somebody asked me about, so sleep is about storytelling for us. It's not just sounds, it's a story. And there's all kinds of stories. And Sam, there's one that's about cats, so you might enjoy that one. It's called Cat Marina. But there's stories, and somebody asked me about the end of the story, and I was like, oh, I have no idea, because I never make it through. So I don't actually know how they end, but there's, I don't know how many different stories are in there. There's probably 50 different stories in there. If movement is big for you, I like to do mine while walking in the morning. There's movement sessions, and then there'll be a theme for that, like appreciation or stress or, whatever you want. If it could be mindful eating. So if you think about the fact that it's not just about meditation, so think about what's important to you and then just search for that item, and there'll be all kinds of content for you. And I think a lot of people also think, well, I don't have time for this. There's 3-minute ones. So, everybody has 3 minutes to do something. So, and there's free trials. So just go play with it and see what you think. And there is group meditation. That's a great point.
That's awesome. Thank you. Is it okay if I ask you now a couple of questions about just you as an executive? We'll move from the Headspace topic. And if anybody, I've got a couple of pre-submitted questions that I'm going to get to, but if anybody has any questions, just either send them directly to me or in the group chat, and we'll get to them as well. A number of people have asked about you've had a number of executive roles in a number of companies. And so what's the learning as you've taken on the CEO role?
Oh, gosh, there's so many learnings, Patty, but I had heard this early on, and there's some truth to it, that it's a very lonely role. There's a little bit of truth to that, because the buck stops here. There is nobody else to go look at, really. So from that standpoint, it's a bit different. Having said that, though, I believe in full transparency and vulnerability. And so I have been trying to be terribly vulnerable with the team on what I know and what I don't know. And I've found that the more vulnerable I am, even if it's about things that I'm dealing with from a stress standpoint during this year, that the team responds really, really well to that. And the reason I think that was important is, a new CEO was coming in to a company that was run by founders and was coming from a company much bigger. And so I think there was a lot of, people scared about, is it going to get overly operationalized? And, are we going to have our jobs? All those kinds of things. And so I think the vulnerability part started to put people at ease. So that was one. And in there was a comfort around when people ask questions, being okay saying, I don't know yet. I haven't learned enough to know. I'm not going to tell you that I'm not changing anything. But I can't tell you yet what I am going to change, because I want to learn more, but I'm certainly not going to, I'm not going to tell you it's going to stay as it is. And so just that form of transparency, I think, was helpful. And then I learned a ton from the company. So, candidly at Intuit, I would never have thought to start an all hands with a meditation, but here, we kind of discovered that together. And so, and in a world where remote working is becoming a norm, I just think those are some things that we can start to incorporate into the new normal for us. I don't know if that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. A number of people also asked just about the adjustments that you had to make as you went from a big company to a smaller company in a different, in a different space.
Yeah. And by the way, I've joined the company 100% during COVID. So, which is also another interesting thing to do, is to take on that role and never have been in the office working with the team that was in the office.
Me too. I've done the
Yeah,
same.
you've done the exact same thing. I would say this. I brought in some needed discipline into the organization. So, beautiful company run by amazing founders, but it did have shiny penny syndrome, and they would acknowledge that as well. And so there were way too many objectives, and they changed because the founders would change them. So it was too tops down. There were very little operating processes to ensure transparency, and then to ensure accountability to what we had declared. And so we implemented, I took the team through a strategy process together, where we just started with a clean sheet. We did beginner's mind. We learned externally first. We looked at what was happening in the marketplace. What could technology do for us? What are our members saying? All of those kinds of things. And we refined our strategy. It was built on a great foundation, but we refined our strategy as a team. We introduced things like PR FAQs, which is the Amazon narrative that we did it into it as well. We introduced experimentation, so rapid prototyping and experimentation, and we taught the whole organization all over Zoom, which was fascinating. But there were just processes that work to move faster, and you would think that a company that is smaller than Intuit would have moved faster, but they didn't, because they didn't have these basics in place. And rapid prototyping and a hypothesis-driven innovation are critical ways to get product into the market faster. Transparency, sharing the numbers. They didn't share the numbers with people. So most employees had no idea what our growth rates were or how we were doing it. They didn't have metrics around things like employee engagement and manager scores for how well are they doing. We didn't have society targets, like what is our responsibility to society. So we built the alignment triangle, which Patty, which enabled us to say our vision through to where we want to be in 2025, to our values, to our strategy and priorities, to the outcomes. All of that was aligned, shared with the company, operating mechanisms put in place to accommodate that. So I would say I did bring more of Intuit into Headspace, but it's actually enabled us to move faster.
Yeah, awesome. Question for you, books you recommend? You guys, she's a voracious reader. So somebody just sent me that question. I'm like, oh, she's going to love that one.
So the one I just finished, because Patty, I think I told you another one. I thought Quantum Marketing was outstanding. It just got released. So I thought Quantum Marketing was outstanding.
And note and said, have you read Quantum Marketing yet? I was like, it hasn't even been released.
So, in fairness, it was sent to me as before it was released. It's great. And then I just finished Blitzscaling. And I thought Blitzscaling was an interesting one as well. Most of the principles are things, if you come from Silicon Valley, that but one of the things that they did was they really talked about how you have to think about talent differently in the different stages of a company's growth. And then it also talked about, when do you blitzscale and when not to blitzscale, and how big companies can blitzscale just like small companies. So I thought Blitzscaling, which is Reid Hoffman, it's the one I literally just finished.
Awesome.
But probably my favorite is actually Grit.
Okay. Awesome. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I think we're going to go to breakout rooms. Is that right? Donna, Aubrey, gang? I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I'm just trying to, there's a couple of questions here, and I'm trying to figure out how to do them. Advice, but I'm just trying to, there's an advice about hindsight in the last year, anything you wish you'd done differently, and then also just over your career, like if you're advising your younger self, what would you advise?
I mean, I like that one because I try to tell this to younger leaders whenever I can. When I made a decision to leave a company that I loved, a long time ago. And I made the decision because in my head, I thought I had to be a general manager. And I didn't see that I was going to get to that position in the time that I thought I needed it. And so I left a great company and went to another company just because of the title. And it turns out, the segment that it was in, I didn't actually like, but I didn't really know that, but I didn't spend any time investigating whether I would like that segment. And so I wasn't very happy there because I went for the title. And so I always try to tell leaders when they say, what do I have to do to get to a VP? What do I have to do to get to be, this or that? I remind them that I've never once asked for the role I got. In fact, I came to Headspace to be the COO. I wasn't expecting to be CEO. It just happened. And so I always encourage people, do what gives you energy. Go for the passion, the purpose of the company. That's what you should focus on. And the work that you do and the people that you do it with. And that's what will cause you to do great work. And that will lead you down other paths if that's what you want. But don't focus on the title. Don't make that your goal.
Yeah. All right. Last question, because our co-founder asked me, or our co-chair, any advice for those of us at larger companies that love the no meeting Friday, how to maybe convince larger companies to adopt something like that?
Well, that's a great question. And I think it's going to be different in every case, but I can tell you that we saw no loss of productivity, but we saw engagement scores go up. And so if you buy into the Glint type engagement scores, that those scores will cause you to have, better outcomes for customers, better financial results. Engagement scores went up because we did it. Managers said they had no impact from productivity, and we ended up with happier employees. So, we look at this as employees are our air. And if they're happy, then goodness will come for shareholders and for customers. And so, we weren't sure. We did it as a test. We'll never come off of it.
Yeah. So for those of you, I work at a small company now as well. I left Intuit as well. And we have 980 Friday. And so 980 is basically you work 80 hours in 9 days and then you take Friday off. So it's not quite, it's a little bit of like, really, you're not losing any hours from people. They're just working longer hours for those 9 days than they normally would. And gave the company, people in the company the option to do that or not. And it's a company of almost 300 people. And I think 2 people aren't on it. And similar feedback, the engagement scores have gone up, and productivity has certainly not suffered.
Patty, I should offer up that one of the things that we did and we continue to do, but we've really gotten way better, big difference from Intuit, is we've been relentless about, does this have to be a meeting or not? So we've reduced the number of meetings on people's calendars dramatically. And it's amazing because when you do that, and then every meeting must have a purpose and must have a pre-read, and you do not present. I don't want to see PowerPoint in a meeting. I want to know why you got us together. Let us pre-read, and then what's the discussion we need to have, and then let's get back to it. That is actually part of what enables us to have this every other Friday give back, because we don't waste a bunch of time for people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Janet, I think you're totally right. It's hard to do it if everybody's not participating. And our C team is great about it. We take the days too. I mean, we're available if there's a question. Sometimes, every once in a while as an exception, but we do not call our people into the meetings. All right. So CeCe, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
I have partnered with the folks at WPI, and we're going to send you a fun swag bag of stuff.
Wonderful. This was delightful. Thank you so much.
And I would love to see you wearing your WPI gear.
For sure.
So welcome back, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed those conversations. I had both the student and graduate on with me in my session. So thank you all for being here with us tonight. This was a nice special program. We're so thrilled that Patty was able to connect with CeCe and she was able to join us. Thank you, Lori, for your remarks too as well. Want to thank both Aubrey Valley and Jen Daigle, who have been behind the scenes here doing the technology and making certain everything ran smoothly. So thank you. Thank you to the Women's Impact Net members here tonight for your support. And they are the grant conversation that you just heard and that we're about to award our $1 millionth. The date set for that is April 14th. It will be another virtual event for us, and hope you can join us for that. And I guess with that, we'll say thank you. Thank you again to Patty, and enjoy your evening.